When I was 16, there was a kid in there who was 18. His father was in there, and his grandfather was in there. And they was all doing over 20. 3 generations just wiped.
We know that it's not that the children fail, it's that the system has been failing our children.
So who should be working and living and existing and offering the solutions to those traumatized young people from the community?
It's important to bring individuals from the community because they are dealing or have dealt with it directly.
Credible messenger mentors are people who have had experience in the justice system and want to get involved in trying to steer people out of the justice system because there's way too many people in the justice system.
It's kind of a stunning idea because here's the system saying
individuals who are ex-offenders are now being featured prominently as partners with justice systems to effect change in the community. This is a major paradigm shift going on.
the idea of a credible messenger has always existed.
And to me, being a credible messenger is a person that can go out there and persuade them to, change their life and want to spread the word about, listen, I've been in the streets, I've been locked up, I'm your age, you could change.
What makes me a credible messenger is that I'm impacted by the same systems. Family's been impacted.
Some people fear, like, what do you mean? Like, you're gonna put some ex-convict working with, like, my kid? And it's like, I wish I could show you, in this person's situation, like, this is exactly who you want working with your kid.
It positions credible messengers in communities that are being ravaged by crime and urban trauma and puts them in a position to be healers. It's a double impact. And that as you serve, it's redemptive and healing and restorative for you.
Our community has all the skills, the talent, but not the resource.
The center now, we have the opportunity to disseminate what we have learned about the approach, but more importantly, as a city, we can now train and cultivate and develop men and women and prepare them to reach the youth in their communities.
You could live in your hood, but you don't gotta be from your hood. You get what I'm trying to say? You don't gotta be a product of your hood.
It's about the community healing the community.
Credible messenger to me is a person that can spread the word to the youth and help, get them back on their feet because everybody falls.
Awesome. And I'm good to go. Welcome, everyone. My name is Hernan Carvente Martinez, and I am the founder and CEO of Healing Lenders, Inc. But more than that, I'm also a credible messenger. And one of the things that really stands out from this film that you all probably can see is just the breadth of power and energy that exists right now in the community. And it's literally by those who've experienced the criminal justice system firsthand. And so I just want to take a moment to honor the fact that we're entering a conversation around how the people doing this work are also taken care of while doing that work. And as someone who survived a suicide attempt 2 years ago, as someone who has gone through therapy after therapy session for the last year, every week for the last year, I can't tell you all how important this conversation is, how important it is for all of us to really think about how we take care of our credible messengers, but more importantly, how we take care of each other as a community. And so I'm honored to be able to introduce two really dope people, Dr. Bruce Purnell and also Richard Smith, both of whom are leaders in their own right and are doing amazing work around healing justice and are going to take us through a facilitated conversation around the importance of self-care and really providing a framework for how we can actively take care of our credible messengers and also of just the people that are doing this work to help our communities heal. And so without further ado, there's a film that both of our presenters have access to view in advance of the conversation. So we're going to transition to that next.
unaddressed trauma didn't start yesterday.
I am not what happened to me. So one of the things we got to teach our people, not just young people, you're not identified by the mistakes that you actually make.
Our youth have been consistently traumatized, and many times they're socialized to escalate quickly. That's the way they deal with stress. So having a strategy for de-escalation is crucial, and play offers that.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome is an explanatory theory that really looks at multi-generational trauma. One of the things that's difficult for people is their first response is, oh my God, that happened so long ago. We're talking about people being captured, shipped, sold, beaten, raped, experimented on, and then you have to ask the question, did the trauma continue? Yes, so 300 years of trauma, no help, freed. No help, more trauma. If it's a sustained trauma, then the impact of that is also sustained. When we look at multi-generational trauma, we're looking at people who are maybe victims of natural disasters and their families and their children and generations of folks who have experienced war. And we know that there are residual mental, emotional, traumatic impact. And what I did was I started to look at the African American experience, starting with slavery, as a real clear, long enduring trauma. So I started to see that there were clear connections between that survival behavior and contemporary living in African American experience. I started to see common behaviors that I took for granted as, well, cultural. There's adaptive behaviors, survival behaviors.
Brother Richard and myself are really excited to go on this journey to express this concept that we've been really dealing with and trying to bring to life, called healing. What does healing look like for us? Especially with the credible messengers and the violence interrupters, because how do you heal from a war? And in this case, this hasn't even been defined as a war, but we've had all the experiences of that. So we want to talk about that space, that brave space, where it's okay to be vulnerable enough to share like what we've seen and what we've felt and what we're going through as we try to help other people heal from this process. What it's like to feel numb when you're just walking forward and knowing that death is going to happen, that pain is going to take place, and all kinds of other social ills. And knowing that we're the ones that made it through, so we're the survivors of this era that are given back, and what that looks like. So when we ask the credible messengers and the violence interrupters, how are you doing emotionally, and we're told, oh, I'm fine. We know that, and you have to know that. How could I be fine if I've taken all this in and continue to take it in vicariously and through others right now? So, as you are walking with the emotions that, and you're the one that's interrupting the piece, like you're in between the emotion and the behavior, what that looks like and feels like. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about ritual a little bit, like a kind of introduction to ritual, just to understand the things that can be put in place where you know that you have a sacred space to heal. So we're ready for this journey. We have about an hour and a half. We're going to go over some concepts, some sensitive issues, and start this dialogue, this conversation about what this looks and feels like.
Every morning I get up and I go outside and stand towards the east and I start praying. I was told that was the time of where the holy people are around, and that when they see me out there sprinkling my white corn and Mother Earth feels it, Father Sky sees me. That's where I get in touch with, you know, the first glimmer of light for today. That's what I need for my spirit to help me glow throughout the day.
We unfortunately live in a culture where we fool ourselves into thinking that we are in dominant, willful control. Okay. I often see people talking about commanding the universe. I don't think so. It's not about commanding. It is about energetically putting yourself in tune with the energies that are in force in nature, you know. So you do things by the cycles of the moon, by the cycles of the human body, of life and of nature, in order to be in accord. And this is done through the orchestration of symbols, you know. And when you learn how to do that, you are moving energy in the electromagnetic field that we all live in such a way that you can traverse the landscape much easier.
So welcome everybody. Next slide. So as we just watched that video, I wanted you to understand the energy that we're healing from, and that this energy isn't ours. Like it's almost like a virus that we caught. Like this energy isn't something that we came up with, but we have to heal from it, and we have to understand like what that is that we're healing from. As our credible messengers and our violence interrupters and the other stakeholders that are in the trenches with this piece, we know that what the last 40 years was a war. And we've experienced addiction, we've experienced homicides, we've experienced violence, abuse, myriad forms of that. Like, so what we're actually coming out of and what we're healing from, we must understand the energy of that, not even the physical nature of that, but the energy of that. So that's what, the video looked the way that it did. Next slide. So before we start, we like to start with the riddle of the day, and it's this. And the first person that gets it and puts it in the chat, we're going to send you a Love More hat, a signature Love More hat. So the first one to answer this, that it comes up, also give you an address and stuff, and we'll send you a hat. So we hurt and heal without moving. We poison or bless without touching. We bear the truth and the lies. We are not to be judged by our size. What are we? Richard, have you got that yet, Richard? Have you got it yet? I know you were working on it.
It take me a while. Uh-oh. We got some sharp people in the audience.
Yeah. You don't be Googling it either. Don't be Googling and trying to come up with it like the Google. Did anybody get it? Let me see. Let me see.
Yeah.
Words. Yeah, who the first person said words? It's words. Who was the first person?
It looks like Taraji Baker. Yeah, Taraji Baker.
All right, Taraji Baker, you're going to get a Love More hat. We're going to send one to you, but that's his words. Like, that's it. All right, next slide. So what we going to talk about today, like we have an hour and a half to really hit a sensitive topic. And so we want to cover some general pieces, but we want you to come out of it with a greater understanding, one that we need to heal, that it's okay not to be okay, and it's a blessing to be a blessing. So one question, why do we need to pay special attention to the healers, right? When we asked our credible messengers and violence interrupters how are they doing emotionally, why do they normally say fine? And the next thing is, how does the organization know if it's holding space for healing? A lot of times we talk about it, but do we actually know that, our space is a brave space? And we're going to get into what a brave space is, but the idea that I feel comfortable enough and vulnerable, comfortable enough being vulnerable and sharing my authentic truth about how I really think and feel right now. And do I have a space for that? Next slide. So we're talking about building the healing space, an acronym of HEAL. So 1H, we hold a brave space through love, trust, and purpose for healers to be vulnerable. So we intentionally going to hold that space. Then we're going to evolve the intentions of this brave space until healing justice becomes organizational ideology and culture. Evolve. So initially you have the idea that you want to do it. Then through a process, it becomes real. Like it has to become real because sometimes it's hard. Like sometimes you'll hold space, or we'll say we hold space for it. And if it doesn't happen, we just move on to the next piece. 3A, affirm the healing justice culture with rituals. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you support the culture? Like, and culture supported with ritual. Sometimes we feel that our culture is, we've lost a lot of ritual with our culture, and we lose the culture when we lose the rituals that supports it. 4, live and love the vibration and frequency of the healing justice culture on purpose. You got to live it and love it to actually to keep it and know that's what we're doing. All right, next slide. The brave space. I find, and you see, like this is kind of my conception of it, because it's like I have to see wherever I am. It's the lens that I actually look through. So I start with the light flower and the compass. The compass, because I got north, south, east, and west, up and down. So I'm holding that space, like through the indigenous culture and our African culture. This is what kind of the world has to look like for me when we do it. So we all have to understand, like, as we look at this world, this physical world, how are we seeing it? Because there's many illusions, there's many commercials that will give you another reality. And once we can see past that reality to the intention of what we wanted to be, then we can create that. All right, next slide. So this piece, our will. So in it, again, your space, like when it becomes sacred, we'll have a north, south, east, west, up and a down. And with that, you see on this, we have a north, which is also winter and spiritual. And then we have an east, which is our mental, and our south is our emotional, and our west is our physical. And we'll kind of claim it. We're claiming it now. Like, so as we bless it and make it a sacred space, we're claiming it. And you also see on the side, we have on purpose, we have we love more, we have live in peace, we have soul. Like these are 4 pieces that as we create this space, it's going to be about this every time, like we come together until we can make that contagious and replicate it. Because we want our community to look like this, like to have this space in our community. But till we get there, we start, and then we start building out from this. But we know what we're building out from, and it's based on spirit, and it's based on ritual, and then we build out from there. Right, next slide. Another piece, and we talk about ritual being a sequence of activities involving gestures, words, actions, objects, performed in a brave space and according to a set of sequence. So once we define kind of our culture and we bring the ritual into it, we get an intersection of that, and that ends up being that brave space. and it's very intentional, and we start to move that way. And we also see that in the ritual that commercial culture has brought in different rituals, like so the different rituals have come in and our children kind of practice it because they do it every day, and whatever you do every day becomes ritual, and it becomes, that infuses the culture. So as we start to reclaim it, we, by design, we got in this by design, we had to get out by design. So that's the intentional part of this. And as Richard, what do you see like when you out in your community? Like originally originally from Brooklyn, right?
Mainly from the Bronx.
So from the Bronx. So what you know about culture? Did you like in your life? Did you see like culture change by rituals? Like as the commercial culture came in, as the war on drugs kind of piece came in, did you see the ritual actual changing and the culture changing?
Yeah, I see. One of the things. First of all, interesting because doing this virtual format. But my name is Richard Smith. Hernan introduced me, but I work for an organization called Common Justice. I'm the national director of a department called United for Healing and Equity, which is a policy and organizing arm. And so I'll share a little bit more about myself once I go the way we're doing this setup, as Bruce is going to go, and then I'm going to go. I also want to say really quickly before I respond to Bruce, that we really encourage you to hit us with your questions, your comments, and your thoughts in the chat box. We're going to pull some of those questions out and allow folks to come on screen with us, right? Because we want this to be interactive. We want this to be and give folks an opportunity to express their thoughts and be seen. Because one of the things that's most important to me when I do this work is recognizing that the most significant people in this right now are not Bruce and myself. The most significant people are the people who are in the audience, the people who are attending this, because many of you are working hand in hand with each other. Some of you know it, some of you don't. So it's important for y'all to see who's in your room, see who y'all connected with, because while y'all out in the trenches, they're going to need each other's support. And so I'm always looking to find ways to make sure that people get connected. And so in response to Bruce's your question, Bruce, I think, to your point earlier about ritual is something that you do continuously, whether you're intentional about it or not. I think a lot of what we did and what I saw and what I experienced became ritualistic, but absolutely it did not have an intentional purpose. If anything, I would say that the intentional purpose was survival, right? Even in the language that we use when we communicated with each other. I remember for a while there was a saying when people say, "Yo, how you doing? What's good? What's good?" We started studying these certain lessons about these particular types of teachings, and brothers would say, "I'm maintaining," right? "How you? I'm maintaining." "What you up to?" "I'm maintaining," right? We were always in this state of the goal was just to maintain, the goal was just to survive. And so the rituals, in my opinion, were designed for us to just survive, for us to maintain. It wasn't designed for the purpose of our ascendance, our transformation, for us to thrive in the way that we had the potential to. It was really a ritualistic process that we embarked on that was just focused on survival and maintaining.
Yeah. As we start to look at healing for us, and I had such a great experience because Ayana Gregory, the youngest daughter of Dick Gregory, she was such a masterful healer that I really got to learn so much as far as, because I come in as a psychologist, not even understanding. I was like, what I had, it couldn't even touch where she was already as far as the healing piece. And so the idea of it was how do we how do I take something like a cognitive behavioral therapy, so to speak, and include our cultural rituals of healing that come from our culture, both indigenous culture, African culture, and infuse that into a process where holistically you would understand like who you were in the process of healing. Because if it's healing for assimilation purposes, that hasn't worked. Like the idea of healing for to be able to assimilate into mainstream society, because it's like the process is a few of you can make it. Everybody try as hard as you can, and a few of you can make it, and everybody else is left behind. That hasn't worked. And our young people have seen that and haven't, and they won't buy into that kind of process. Like, so, because it's not holistic, it's not universal, and it's not working for our people. So the idea of a process where that's the goal doesn't work. So, but knowing who we are, like, so starting from like, who are we anyway, and what's the point of healing? Because another thing that young people say universally is that, why would I sacrifice the present for a future that I don't believe in? So, which makes a lot of sense to me, because it's like, well, why, we're asking them to delay the instant gratification piece for a future, because we said, don't do this because something else is out there for you. But then when it comes to really understanding what that thing is that's out there for you, it's not even real. So, and what comes from that, and if you don't heal in that process, it becomes well, what's going to be my self-medication? How do I deal with the pain of the past? Because I don't even understand the why of why I'm hurting. So I need some kind of way to self-medicate this. And our self-medications have taken us to jail. It's taken us to addiction. It's been the breakdown of the family. So, it's like, and we don't even understand why we got into this piece. So it's so important to start historically, so we can have a foundation of even knowing why this self-medication isn't okay. Like, we need to know why. We need to know, like, why is it, and who is our community? What does community look like? There's so many things that we have to venture down to understand as we move forward. And because whatever else happens, it's like it's when healing happens and it, it's like that becomes almost like you want to know more. Like, if it's possible that I can really release this pain, if that's true, if I can trust you enough to believe that, then what's this process going to be? So if our credible messengers and violence interrupters are given that task, like, say, you're on the front line of that piece, to say, are you being equipped with enough where you're going to be okay as you take in all this pain that you're going to receive, that because we're in pain, we're going to have to give that to you. Okay, next slide. So we have a group of slides, and I want everybody to look at each picture from a lens of how does this relate to our situation and healing. And they're different ones, and you'll see as you look at them. And I want you to come up with and put it in the chat what you come up with as you look at the pictures and how this relates to situations that you may have encountered. Okay.
Hi, Bruce.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Deetra, and she said most of our rituals in this culture is unconscious. And I asked if she would like to elaborate. So she would love to join you to speak further.
Oh, great. Great.
Okay. All right. A few seconds. Thank you.
Bruce, while we wait for Deetra to come on and join us, one thing that came to mind as you were talking, and I was just reflecting on the statement that I made, and even what the statement that Deetra made. One, first and foremost, Black women, you referenced Ayana, Black women have been historically the healers of our community, right? We know that. They have carried the spirit of healing the process of healing from one generation to the next, utilizing any medium that they got their hands on to support our healing. You know what I mean? Whether it's Christianity, whether it's whatever it was, whether it's just conversations in the kitchen. And so I think it's important for us to uplift that. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge the fact that even though we have been disconnected to what is authentically our healing process, in a lot of ways, there still is a lifeline that exists in us. So the same way that we talk about historical trauma and intergenerational trauma, there has also been historical healing and intergenerational healing that has been passed down from one generation to the next. And I would say the life force that has guided that has been Black women.
Yeah, that'd be a main thing. Even with my group Soul, my seniors offering unconditional love. Like Mama Trinette, Chase, every time like she talk to me like, "Are you okay?" No, you need to rest. You need to be okay. Like, let's make sure that you're okay. It's a nurturing, loving piece that the sisters just really I guess we were socialized out of it, and even with all that they've been through, it's so natural to them that they still embody love. With all that they've been through, so and we got to nurture that, man. Like we can't, we definitely have to nurture that, because that's almost all we have left is the foundation of our love is that piece, man. Like I don't know, man. Our grandmothers, man. Like that whole seat, knowing to be unconditional love. Like some of our young people don't know. They don't have that grandmother piece that's they don't there's some not to be able to see that piece, man. So I agree totally.
And I think that's why it's so important for us as we acknowledge the fact that Black women are the most unprotected among us, that we ensure their protection, because our lifeline, our very own existence depends on it. And so it's not a coincidence that it is the way that it is, and that our Black women are under attack, even from those of us who've internalized this self-hatred in a way that causes us to take our anger and frustration, not on the forces and those who truly oppress us, but those who love us, those who've consistently loved us historically.
And many who talk about the whole crack era see it as the attack was really on the Black woman. It was a take our sisters out of being off of the foundation piece, and that was the attack. That's what crack was led to do, and it looks like it, man. Like when you really look at what happened, and and what our foundation was, like if it was an attack on us, you are going to attack the Black woman. So I agree with you totally. So I don't think Deisha could get on because she couldn't download that.
She couldn't get on.
So
but we'll keep space open.
After we go through the flicks, like at the end, we'll go and have conversation about ritual and what that looks like for us in the healing space and the cultural space. And our young people love it. Our young people love when they can actually do something. Like even the young brothers that are really in Islam, they love the fact that they pray 5 times a day. They make it sense like it's something that they have to do. Like okay, we look to the East and they'll explain to you what they do, and they have to have something that they actually do as a process that they feel is important and special. And I think that's in our DNA, man. Like it's definitely in our DNA. All right, let's go to the first picture. As you look at it, this piece will when I said that when we asked Incredible Messengers and the Violence Interrupters, anybody else like, how you doing? One time, like, we so numb to pain, we just like, I'm okay, I'm good. Oh, we carrying all this stuff, anxiety, stress, doubt, like every disappointment that ever happened, right? Like, so we still remember it and we're protecting it. And we have a statement that says, love like you never been hated. It's our first like affirmation on our Healing Leaders piece. And the idea of loving like you never been hated is like, can you imagine what the next love would look like in your life if you never knew anything about being any kind of deceit, any kind of, no time in your memory did love ever hurt, what the next experience would look like if you could imagine that. Like, so the idea of releasing it and what that looks like, and it's okay not to be okay. Like, we got to know that it's okay. Like, you're not supposed to be carrying this stuff around. The last piece with this too, I want to touch for 1 second, is the idea of resilience, because I hear it so much as the goal. And yeah, it's a protective factor, and we need to be strong enough to get through the next trauma, to endure the next trauma. But resilience is not the goal. It's joy and happiness is the goal. So resilience should help us get there. Resilience shouldn't be the goal of it. So the idea that we're strong enough to endure the next trauma shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be joy and happiness is where you should be going. All right, next slide.
And Bruce, I want to just emphasize what Tiffany said. If y'all have, please drop your responses and your feelings and your thoughts about these slides, these images that Bruce put together in the chat box.
Yeah, we can discuss it. Yeah.
Oh, hey, Bruce and Richard. Some people did have some responses.
Okay.
Roxana said, truth, a lot of times it is like a knee-jerk reaction. Shanique said, we cover up our stuff. Ari or Arl said it's a learned resilience. Saraldi said lack of checking in. AJ said putting in so much effort to heal others while carrying too much of our own that isn't dealt with. We have a lot of great comments here. I put, this picture means to me, we keep pushing as if there's nothing wrong. But this is normal for us because we've been doing it for so long.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely.
Those are great comments.
And I want to just emphasize, right, that outside of this, the reason why I keep reiterating the importance of y'all putting it there, and just expressing your thoughts and your feelings, because although we're presenting information, this is a space for us. Bruce earlier talked about a brave space, and our objective is to make this a brave space where we can dedicate and allocate this time to really focusing on us, because as someone said in the chat, oftentimes we're so focused on healing and serving and supporting other people that we don't even have enough time and energy left for ourselves. And so please look at this as a time and an opportunity for y'all to express your own needs, express your own feelings and your thoughts.
That's right. I see Roxana said we are missing peace to someone else's healing. Others have a part in our healing. The unity, community, wounded healers. And if you really, like, especially from a lens of a credible messenger or a violence interrupter, if you look at this as coming through incarceration, right? You come through incarceration and you come out and with the idea that, okay, I'm gonna switch it up. I'm gonna do something different. Go to the classifieds and figure out, dang, I gotta change myself this much. So you change yourself, whatever you have to do, you do it, and then you come up and find out today you don't even fit now. After you did all that, and that sends people right back to where they were, like, really. And that's the process for so many people. You do everything you're supposed to do, and there's still nothing out there for you. And so that piece in that puzzle, like, so you can look at it so many different ways, but it ends up being the experience of the indigenous experience, the Latino experience, the Black experience in America. pretty much is what it looks like. There's always a duality in nature. Wow. Resilience can become the enemy if overly identified with. Wow. And that's why. Therese, we live in a rush society. Making time to process our own stuff is important to the healers. That's right. I feel like this slide is showing acceptance, but then one changes to gain friends. Wow, that was Shanique. Curtis, everyone has their own purpose in the world. Wow, yeah. Shanique, ouch. I love it. Okay. Teacher interdependence for healing ourselves. From Mrs. Why? Who am I really? Oh, that's Trinette. Who am I really? Wow. That's the point. Like, and well, I think that we have to start with that point of the why. Like, why am I here? Like, what is my divine purpose? And what is there something for me on this planet versus what's given to me? For, like Richard said earlier, for survival. All right, next slide. We should have Marvin Gaye or something playing, Richard in the background. Like, I'm hearing like I want you to want me. Something, man.
Bruce, don't start singing. You're gonna have everybody dropping off.
I was almost there. I was almost there, man.
Ain't signed up for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that just came to it's been on my heart since we started, and just even thinking about all of this, specifically as it relates to credible messages, is you were credible before your incarceration. You were credible before you were shot. We were credible before we had any of these traumatic experiences that oftentimes get associated with our identities and utilized for the purpose of making us valuable. I understand the process of taking something negative and turning it into something positive. But at the same time, our credibility, just like our worthiness, did not begin with our trauma. And it shouldn't live with our trauma.
That's right. Yeah, that's powerful. Roxanne says, waiting for, expecting for that thing to make us happy. Jasmine said, gaslighting. Carrie said, always a new fire waiting to start when you put out the current one. Roxanne laughed. Okay. The Richard Rowe must place the cultural and spiritual. Let me see. Must place the cultural and spiritual oxygen mask on ourselves first, so we can be available to heal others, to engage in collective healing. I am well and valued because we are well and valued. Well, I am because we are. Yeah, that's it. Taraz, everything that looks good isn't good for us. Let's see. AJ, ignoring something good for us, what we might think something might be better. Wow. Yeah. We said, well said, Richard. Shanique, wow, I see someone looking for what's already in front of them. I think this thing, it scrolls real fast. And then one of them, but more interested in something they know may harm them. Wow. And hey, you look at so many different ways, like, the person that will keep that light going and that light shine is being completely ignored. And you're right, the extinguisher is being acknowledged. And how many times has that happened? And isn't that the program or the script that we're fighting? Like, we're being led to things that will put our lights out, but we've been led to believe that's attractive. So that's deep. Mr. Dietrich said, we often miss the people who will help us because we get caught up with the trappings. Wow. False expectations accepted as real. Celeste, going with the trend instead of seeing the truth right in front of you. And then, some things come along to put out your fire while you leave the things to the side that can spark your fire. Wow. Y'all on it.
Yeah, you're brighter than, y'all smarter than me, because when Bruce showed me this, I said, what is this?
I know, right? How many times does that happen in your life, though, Richard? How many times does that happen?
Yeah,
you had to make sense of something that you was led to believe was supposed to be attractive, and you found out that it was the worst thing in the world. And how many scenarios does that lead to?
Yeah, and it's also, sometimes the things that are not healthy for us or not good for us are the shiniest things, right?
Yeah.
If you look at that image, one thing I'm noticing, like, that person is on a motorcycle, right? That person has, like Deidre said, the trappings. And so sometimes you can see things and our senses will deceive us into believing that what we see with all of its shininess and its glamour is what we should be drawn to, And I think sometimes it's almost instinctual, it's autonomic, that our behavior is for us, responses to be drawn to the shining, bright thing. Like a lightning bug,
Hey, I know it hurt Moses' feelings, man. Moses went to get the commandments. He came back, folks was dancing around a golden calf, man. Like, yeah, he ain't get it either, but it's like, really it's something to that piece, man. Like, like you said, it's shiny. It bells and whistles around it. It's like the Pied Piper. Like, now you follow the Pied Piper to the cliff. And when you figure out it's a cliff, there's so many people behind you that just pushes you over. So that's a deep piece, man. All right, next picture. Y'all good, boy. This piece right here, like, oh, but I ain't gonna say. Let me not say nothing yet.
Hi, Lisa.
Lisa, that's good, boy.
I tell you one thing that's always exciting for me when I'm in these spaces is see all of the connections that already exist. And that's so important. That's so we have our tribes, we have our community, but it's also very easy. I know I'm to speak for myself. It's very easy for me to forget that there are people that are healers that are next to me, that I have so many people in my circle, in my network, in my life, that when I'm going through something, I can turn to them. But there's just something, I don't know, right, that like plays a trick on my mind and causes me to believe, that I shouldn't reach out, that I might be burdening somebody too much, or I'm calling them too much. And so I sit with it alone. And while I'm sitting with it alone, it's not sitting with it alone and meditating on it in a positive way. Oftentimes it's sitting with it alone and allowing it to fester, allowing assumptions and the meaning based on a false narrative that I make to cause more stress and anxiety. Someone said, I think it was Deidre said, that anxiety and depression and all of these things have been normalized. As we think about every aspect of our lives, and I think one of the people in the video that you show talk about the education teaching us that we always need to be in command. We always need to be in control. right?
Yeah.
Even to the point where I'm going to control the situation and not reach out to the people who I know will offer their time and their energy to support me. So it's beautiful to see all of y'all on this call, all the people that I know, y'all knowing each other. Stay connected to each other.
That's cool. All right. Shanique said depression, loss of oneself, be careful. Carrie said careful transference, don't lose yourself in others' issues. Taraj said losing yourself. Taraldi said drastic change can do that to you. Wow. Roxana said my daughter, 19, said girls are willing to keep going to toxic men that are putting out their light. Wow. But look past people who will work with them and bring back the light. Okay. All right. AJ, loving hard and getting hurt often leaves us in a place to lose ourselves. Tizer, what society does to me versus who I really am. You are there, but you can't see yourself. How do you love yourself? I don't know myself. And that we see so much like of this. And Dietrich says self-abandonment. Yeah, this is so prevalent for healers. We often work from a place of depletion because giving is more important in the culture of healing than receiving, which is an imbalance. Wow.
And I'm gonna apologize in advance for Bruce messing up, butchering your name. I'm apologize for Bruce.
For who?
Butchering your name. If he butchered your name, I'm gonna apologize for
yeah. And notice, like, I don't have glasses because I'm saying the world's playing a trick on me and words are getting smaller. It's not my eyes, right? That's why I won't accept the fact that I need glasses. Anyway, as we see this piece, like we see over and over again, we lose the smiles and we don't see it. And if we're the healers also, people might not even recognize the fact that we're losing the place of joy. And sometimes we can't remember. When we ask people like, do you remember the last, when you were the happiest? Do you remember when you were loved the most? Do you remember these times? And it's like, if we get caught in misery and the whole idea that misery loves company, like, we say, but joy loves company also. But if you get caught in that culture of misery, at some point you can lose your joy. And I don't know a greater freedom than joy. That peace, like, just the place inside you where you just have, Mama Karen was saying today, just laughter, like, just something so therapeutic about laughter, being able to laugh and smile. Let me see. Mama Karen's on here. She said, we can go back to a time when we last felt we are somebody in value. Lisa said, you can lose yourself in the work. Vicarious trauma can alter your view of self, ability to experience joy and socialize with others. Richard Rowe, in the ocean of despair and devaluation, we have been programmed to lose ourselves, our smiles, our joy, our hope. So our best self seldom shows up anymore. Wow. Dietrich said, Lisa, yes. And Lisa said, pieces of freedom. Wow. What's your feeling about this slide, Richard?
I mean, I think everyone captured it. We get consumed by so many other things that the world tells us that we need to focus on, that we lose ourselves. And we feel like the purpose, huh?
How about you? Yeah. Like, so as you started to heal and you thought back from what you were healing from, did you see that person that you had to release? The lost Richard?
Yeah, I saw that person. But I think, sadly, and as we think about this within the context of this training and the folks who are on this training who are doing this work, who are first and foremost individuals, right? But for me, if I were to recreate that image, the picture would be probably a 9-year-old boy And that would be me at the age of 21 when I was being sent away to prison for a decade. And that 9-year-old boy would be right after I experienced the various forms of abuse, from sexual abuse, physical abuse, and all of those other things that interfered with my ability to really find my joy, to be happy, to smile. Because unfortunately, under the conditions that I was growing up in, and not exclusively my home, because I'm not here to blame parents or families, because oftentimes it's just a cycle, and we can only teach what we're taught. We can only heal to the extent that we've healed ourselves. And if we're all struggling and trying to get past the historical trauma, the intergenerational trauma that exists in our communities and with us as a people, it's not a coincidence that oftentimes even those who love us the most sometimes hurt us. And so it's important for me to show compassion, and I have to say that. But for me, that picture would have been a 9-year-old boy who was lost, who was happy, who smiled. And that would be me in prison. And it was also during my incarceration that I found myself reverting back to that 9-year-old boy. The healing journey for me started with going back to that 9-year-old boy and embracing all of those feelings and those thoughts that I had about myself, about the world, that were a direct result of the trauma and the pain that I experienced. And looking at it with an older mind, a more mature mind, because at 9, I couldn't conceptualize it. I couldn't understand it. I didn't even have language to articulate to other people who wanted to help me and support me what it is that I was experiencing.
Wow. Powerful. Okay, Mimi said, how can you have individuality as a messenger with negative judgment from your peers as far as their judgment? As far as their judgment as you as a person, is your individuality valuable? That's a serious piece, because in this, so if the play, say the community calls a play that's violent, right, and you intercept it, so as a interrupter or credible messenger, you intercept that pass. So right there in the community called a violent play, and you're supposed to be a part of the community. Now you intercepted not only did you intercept the ball, you're running the other way. The community is going to hold you right there and say, like, well, what are you, the police? Are you who are you right now? Like, and even though like you're for the healing of the community, it's a hard position to be in. So, and the idea of who you are, like as you transform your life and you're bringing light energy, you're bringing love energy into a play that may not even know how to have room for it. So yeah, that's a hard piece as you, like as a messenger, like, how that's valued. And that's why it's so important for us to have a support network and you to have a place to go and be able to where you can release and heal. See. Juan said we must be the parent, friend, mentor that we needed but never had. As we move forward in life, we are healing our past selves as we begin to heal others. Wow. Teacher, beautiful Richard. Yes, we are on extension and using ritual to break the trauma bonds of our family and our ancestors. Well, Veronica. Hey, Veronica. For me, it would be the 10-year-old girl holding the picture, looking for the 54-year-old woman that left her behind. Wow. Okay, next slide. Okay, and I'm gonna go like, well, yeah, let me go past this. I need to get to, I know time's moving. We need to get the Richard's piece. Let's go next slide, please. Yeah, and this will be the last one. Then we'll go to Richard. And quickly, give me a title for this. Give me a title. Just give me a title. I would say Lisa said that's why you have to others outside of those people to nature and support you. Sometimes we look for support and affirmation of who we are from people who don't have the capacity or intention. Wow. Wow. Dumping ground. Wow. Never ending cycle. Everyone is dumping their trash on each other. Wow. What goes around comes around. Without healing, we dump our mess onto others. Wow. I dump my mess onto someone else instead of dealing with it myself. Keep coming. Wow. Hurting someone else is hurting ourselves. Hurt people hurt people. Putting my trash in someone else's backyard is a way kind of never dealing with my own bleeding heart. Dumping our hurt onto someone else instead of dealing with it. We are not effective when trying to heal from a state of depletion. Stop the process, rest, and refuel. Lisa says cycles. Karen, transformation. Pain to joy is a daily ritual. Greed, hurt people, hurt people. Barbara said, AJ, not coping with our own pain becomes a cycle of dumping on others. Roxana, hurt people, hurt people. Andre Brown, the cycle of life. Ties are poured into others. Wow, y'all captured it. That karma piece, boy, like we gonna get back what we put out. We are a toxic society. Yeah, that's what we healing from. That yeah, it's once we see that, boy, for real, like there's no commercial that can sell toxic waste, boy. I guess they probably could. They probably could sell toxic waste. We probably wear them in shoes if they present the right way. Blindly Bailey. Wow, Alexis. Okay, we're gonna transition to Richard's slides.
I thought I wasn't gonna have to present. I thought I wasn't gonna have to present. Go ahead, Bruce. Keep on. Take us home. No.
You got moonwalk or something now, man. You gotta do something, man. Do that TikTok dance, man. You've been working on, man. While we waiting for your slides. You gotta do something while we waiting for your slides, man. What you got to do?
Yes. Yes. Oh man, thank you, brother Bruce. I want you to stay on. You know, I'm a communalist. I love the connection. I love the interaction. I started a stupid doctoral program about 8 years ago, and nobody told me that it was a singular process. You had to lock yourself in your room and do everything by yourself. And that's the reason why I'm still struggling in that damn program, because I work with people. You know, I'm alive when I'm with people, and I know everyone is different. And our process for learning and sharing is different, and thriving is different. So thank you for that, Bruce. Thank you all for like the comments and the input and the feedback that you've offered us thus far. So, you know, when probably about 7 years ago now, I started calling myself a wounded healer, right? People would always ask me, you know, what is it that you do? Like, what's your title, right? Because we always try to categorize, right, people in a way that makes sense for us. And doing my transition back into the community from incarceration, you know, it was almost like I was the equivalent of a college graduate who studied something in college and just knew that they wanted to work in that field. And then they got their first job in that field and it was like, oh, this is it. This is part of what I'm looking for. But this ain't completely it. and then they moved on to another job. And before you know it, they get to a point where they're like, wow, your resume is all over the place. And I remember feeling like that, because some people would say, oh, you're scattered. Some people would say, you're all over the place. Like, do you know what you want to do? And I didn't know the medium precisely. I didn't know the approach precisely. But what I did know is that in every one of those spaces, I often tried to create a space of healing. I often, whether it was working with folks who were formerly incarcerated, transitioning back into the community, working with young people, who were in the juvenile justice system, or just like providing support services to young people who were struggling academically and their families, even in working in academia, I often found myself trying to create a space of healing. And part of that was driven by the fact that as early as I could remember, I always had a heart for helping people. And I always felt other people's struggle and pain. And it's just that when I was a kid, I would speak up. I was a self-proclaimed bully of the bullies. And I spoke up on behalf of the people that I felt were being taken advantage of it, whether it was my brother, whether it was my cousin. It got me in a lot of trouble. But I always considered myself to be a wounded healer, not even knowing the term. And then about 7 years ago, I said, I'm a wounded healer. And I called that. And what I meant by that is that, my pain, my experiences is what really gave me the empathy that I needed to connect with people. And I would probably argue that I didn't even have to experience pain and suffering to develop empathy. And that's something that I actually want to push past, right? Because we often assume that the fact is that you have to go through something in order to be able to connect. And I think there's some validity to that. But I do think that empathy is just a part of the human makeup. It's a part of the human spirit. And we've just been so detached from who we truly are that oftentimes it takes us to encounter a really harsh and painful situation that humbles us and reminds us, puts us in a position where we can then identify and connect with people because we are remembering of the pain that we suffered. And we don't want to wish that on anyone else. And then I told myself I wanted to start looking into it a little further, right? And I'm using this term. What does that term mean? And I started doing a little research, and I started finding out that people like Carl Jung, like this first slide up here says, right? And Carl Jung came up with a concept called the wounded healer. And I said, what? And when you talk about the universal mind and how, once you start to make that journey inward to heal, but also to self-actualize and become who you are authentically created to be or designed to be, you start to align yourself with principles that are universal, that have shown up historically. And then you start to gain access. And that's what happened for me. So when I read this, I said, oh, shoot, this is the same thing I was thinking. And then I started to look a little further and be like, wait a minute. So, this wounded healer concept is not only just something that Carl Jung talked about as he reflected on Greek mythology and the story of Chiron, but it's a cultural archetype that has always existed. And it existed in multiple cultures, shamanistic cultures, Talmudic cultures. And it was always this story of this archetype of this wounded healer. Carl Jung talks about Chiron as the centaur, half man, half horse, who was unlike the other centaurs who engaged in like drunkenness and were violent and were angry. He was naturally just more calm and peaceful, and he would actually educate them. He was known as the educator. He was known as someone who could teach the teachers or teach the other physicians. He was also a physician. And it wasn't until he actually got hurt by the bow of another god that he found himself in a predicament where he could heal everyone else and he can help everyone else, but he could not heal himself because the power of that bow caused pain and damage that was irreparable. And so the story goes that he traveled the land healing everyone else and helping everyone else, but he couldn't help himself. He couldn't help himself. And so I said, wow, this adds so many layers to what I see in myself. And then years later, what I started to see all across the country. You know, I'm fortunate enough to be in a position, in a role where I'm able to connect with people throughout the country who are healers, who are doing this work in their communities, this work to support the healing journey of the folks in their communities. And I constantly encounter that same narrative. The folks who shared their experiences of those that were serving, going the hardest, being the most committed, being the most invested, doing the most work, but while simultaneously not being equally as invested in their own, continuing their own healing journey. Often to the extent that that neglect would lead to the past pain resurfacing in a way that it started to sabotage the very thing that was near and dear to their heart, which was turning their tragedy, turning their trauma into a healing mechanism, being able to serve and support other people. But because of the lack of support and the struggle that we face, when we tried to turn around and take that same approach for ourselves to continue our own healing journey, we actually ended up sabotaging. And I know that firsthand. And that's something that happened to me personally. Here I was doing all of this great work in the community, supporting other people. Everyone looked at me as like a leader. But then there was so much stuff going on in my own home. There was stuff that was surfacing because I didn't continue my own healing journey. That not only just compromised my ultimate well-being, but compromised the well-being of my family and hurt the very same people who love me the most. And so this just put me on this path to try to create, you know, a space for those of us who are doing this work, who are wounded healers, to be really committed and invested in supporting ourselves and supporting each other. And what I will say, and you can go to the next slide. What I will say, actually, you can go past that. What I will say is that this is not only just for the folks who are directly doing the work. And this is something that I hope happens shortly. And that is, we want to make sure that the people who are in the room in these conversations are the people who make the decisions necessary for us to be very intentional about creating organizational cultures that are steeped in the same healing that we are committed to providing to the folks that we serve. Because if we don't, we'll lose our most valuable assets, which is the very people who we trust with going out there in the name of our organization, in the name of our, nonprofit, right? Giving them the title of credible messenger, giving them the title of outreach worker, the people who are representing us in the public, representing us with providing the most significant service, that if their services weren't being provided, our organization wouldn't exist. We are those same people. They are the same people that the organizations are in turn not being equally as committed to supporting their healing journey and supporting their healing. Because when we talk about the impact, and this is something that I recently started thinking about, is the fact that we say impacted parties or impacted people or justice involved. But I said we talk about impact as a means of adding credibility to someone who can support the work that you're doing by connecting with the folks that share those experiences. But we neglect that impact because that impact is persistent, that impact is real. And let's just face it, many of us have had those impactful, traumatizing experiences well beyond we were ever arrested, well beyond, we experienced something in the streets or what have you that they say that gives us credibility. Many of us have that history that existed way before that. And so when we think about this healing journey, and we think about healing wounded healers, it really is a process of organizational leaderships, being equally invested. And I know it's not easy, because the fact is, many of us, like Bruce said earlier, when you ask folks how they're doing, we still come with that, I'm good. And my take on that is that oftentimes we feel like if I tell people I'm not good, it might compromise this. It might compromise my position. It might knock me off the pedestal. It may put me in a position where I can't do this work that's so important to me. Because let's face it, many of us have found meaning for all of the tragedy that we experience in life by doing this work. And so we don't want to compromise that. But the fact is, inevitably, if we don't acknowledge that we're still going through these things, that we are human, and that we're having these things take place in our lives outside of the workplace environment that are causing us further pain, it's eventually going to really compromise us doing this work. And I want to stop right there really quickly, because I want to ask you, Bruce, what are your thoughts on that? And folks in the audience, if you could share, put it in the chat, what you thinking, what's coming to your mind?
I think that balance, that's what I was thinking about, the idea of that joy and pain piece, and that it really, there's a balance there if we could see it. Like, then I was thinking about the rain, like, it rains and the rain feeds the trees, like, but sometimes storms come. So what happened to us is like it's like our pain, like, which we should experience probably sometimes, has become commercialized and normalized and promoted as a norm. So it's like misery becomes a norm, and it's like there's no balance there. And especially when you get to the point where you can't fathom joy and happiness, you just are trying to suppress pain. So your life becomes reacting to issues and whatever you put into place, so you don't feel the pain, so you never get a chance to live for joy. And it's a whole different way. That's what I was thinking about as you was describing it. I was like, wow, like, do we get to be happy? Like, isn't that what our ancestors fought for? Isn't that, why, the selection was to go ahead and stay here? Like, rather than, okay, not go back to Africa, we stay here because somebody believed that we could actually move to a place of joy. And I'm like, it's so, I was thinking all those things, man. I was thinking the point of the healing piece, like, and the point isn't not to suppress pain, because I know some of the brothers and sisters that were addicts, and especially in recovery, will say that it wasn't even about getting high. It was about removing lows. It's like, it's not even about high. I just don't want to feel the pain. And I get it, man. Like, I get it. But it's like, yeah, this has to move to a point where we can say that we're in this whole piece to move to a point where we're going to be happy, where our family, our children are going to be smiling and not have to worry about this same kind of these same traumatic experiences that we're talking about. It has to be this way. This has to be about. If not, then what kind of cycle are we in? That's what I was thinking.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Bruce. I'm thinking I want to read a few other statements that are being said. I see pain as our potential gift waiting to be actualized, and that was from Juan. Dr. Bruce, exactly. I agree. It's all the same energy. Someone just labeled it and gave it value as bad or good. Absolutely. Therefore, be grateful for all things. All things work together for on our behalf. That was Veronica. And Roxana said, there is beauty in growth in our pain. We run from it because it hurts. But that is where all of the good deepness of our life comes from. The world wants us to avoid it, but we have to purpose to press, deal, and heal. Absolutely. And then I'll take Evelyn's last one is when will my healing really take root? Always something else. Woo! Let's go right there. And I want to start from that piece right there. Thank you all for your comments and your statements. I'll never forget having a conversation. I think you might have been at this, Tiffany. You were part of this, Bruce. And we were having this conversation for a project that Bruce and I are part of, which is developing a scale to measure healing outcomes for young people of color who've been impacted by community violence. And I can share more about that at the end because I want to be able to share. I want us to have an opportunity to share about projects and work that we're doing so that they can have an opportunity to be a part of it and tap in. And we can leave here with not only just information, but some action steps on what we could do for ourselves and how we can support each other. Because oftentimes the burden of this work is due to, one, we don't always know when to ask for what we need, right? As the people who do this work, many of us think we have to do it single-handedly, and we'll just go at it hard, even if it takes us working from 6 a.m. To 2 a.m. at night, and then we got to wake up the next day and deal with trauma and tragedy all over again, which is not sustainable at all. It's impossible. But during this conversation, one of the younger brothers who was there said, man, so what are you telling me, right? If we say healing is a process and healing is a journey, are you saying that I ain't never going to be healed? And that's a sad thing to think about. And I said, you know what, brother, you are absolutely right, right? Like, who wants to be totally defined as just healing? Who wants to be defined as us just being resilient, right? Like, who wants to be defined as that, right? And it had us thinking, like, there are levels to this, and there are levels to the ways in which we heal. And one of my colleagues, Dr. Alexa Jamal, who's the researcher and the developer on the scale development, said, I think that there are capital letter H healing, and there is lowercase letter H healing. And there are processes and experiences in our life that we can heal different parts of our pain, but simultaneously moving past that, right, towards this larger healing. And I would say that larger healing is truly, and it may even transform into something beyond just healing. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like what you offer, Bruce, about transformation, right? Because it really is more towards gearing us to reach our fullest potential, right? Mm-hmm. Beyond just healing, right? And that's the way to kind of frame it, to like make it so we don't have to be stuck in a state thinking that we are the sum total of our trauma and that our life has to be committed to healing and our life has to be committed to doing this work. This work is important to me. This work has been purposeful for me. This work has given me meaning. I never forget reading Man's Search for Meaning in Prison by Viktor Frankl and saying, wow, starting my healing journey and supporting the healing journey of other people in prison. And I said, this was what it's about. And then about 5 years ago, I started asking myself, what would my purpose be if all the inequity didn't exist? Because that's the thing we have to think about as well, right? It's not only interpersonal violence and trauma and harm. It's systemic trauma and violence and harm that, if you ask me, is at the root of the interpersonal trauma and violence that we experience. It is the social forces that creates the conditions that leaves us in predicaments in which we are fighting for a scarcity of resources, not just resources materialistically and externally, but resources internally, right? And resources from each other, feeling like there's a scarcity, like you said, Bruce, a scarcity of love, not just a scarcity of money, but a scarcity of love. And so I got to do things in order to get love, and then it doesn't even become love after a while. It just says, I got to do things to get attention because I am so in need of love that I fear is not even there.
Yeah, that's
right. And so what would my life's purpose be? What would our life's purpose be if everything that we are fighting to ended tomorrow?
Wow. I think too, man, if we used physical life as a metaphor, then, and you could say that, well, if we're going to die, what's the point of all this taking care of your body? What's the point of eating right? What's the point of stretching and being flexible if we're going to die anyway? Or you could say that, nah, like, we have the opportunity to live and be able to move and grow and feel good. We don't have to be in physical pain if we don't have to. Like, so, it's so much better to be able to move and live and not be in physical pain than it is to be in physical pain. So I think the same way emotionally, like we have the opportunity to live with joy. So if we can release that pain in the past to move to a place of feeling good every day, to wake up and being excited about tomorrow, not like, oh no, tomorrow's going to be worse than the day. Now, to actually be excited about the opportunity to create a tomorrow, then, ends up being like the whole trajectory of how I feel about myself and the world changes.
Absolutely. I'll take a few comments. Juan said the lone wolf syndrome, referencing us trying to go at it alone. Deborah Foss. Wow. Hi, Deborah. Long time no see or hear from. Hope you're doing well, you and your family. Unresolved grief gets embedded in our personhood, and sometimes we don't even know just how far away we are from who we really are. Well, that's profound. And then Carl says, our strength and collective power comes from a process of shared vulnerability. If I do not know how, where, and when can I help? Absolutely. Richard Rose says, unfortunately, joy, happiness, and hope has been commodified, commercialized, and objectified. So we don't know what true happiness, healing, and joy really looks like or feels like. Carl said, we are on a continuous journey of recovery, uncovering, discovering, and rediscovering our true self. Absolutely. Right. Sometimes us healers don't allow others in to help us free ourselves. We suffer unnecessarily longer than we have to because we feel that we should be strong enough to deal with our own pain. We usually have the answers for other people, but we are so hard on ourselves because we don't always accept the answers we give others for ourselves. And ain't that a fact? Yes, I'll tell you, one of the things that has been so crucial in my continued healing journey and my continued transformation is having people that in my life that can call, and check in. I know Tiffany said earlier that she has a person in her life that she checks in with when she's going through different sorts of challenges. And that's right? We got that person. And it's so important to have that tribe, especially of those of us who are doing this work, right? And I don't believe that clinical therapy is for everyone. I am a proponent of it. I am in therapy myself. But I have so many therapeutic conversations. I have so many therapeutic relationships and friendships in my life that it's a constant. It's a continuous. It's not just a once every 2 weeks experience where I'm sitting down with someone for an hour. It's really trying to create that type of unit, that type of tribe in our lives with the people who get us, who understand us, who see us for who we are. Because let's face it, oftentimes people don't understand why we're doing the stuff that we do. People say, man, that's admirable. But why are you doing that? You know what I mean? And so one of the things that we struggle with oftentimes, and I'm speaking for the people in my circle as well as myself, is feeling like people don't understand us. They don't get us, right? And that's another thing that creates a sense of loneliness. Feeling like we can't talk to people about these things that we're experiencing, particularly as it relates to this work, because folks may not understand why you're so committed to spending all of these hours supporting other people. People will say, that's admirable, that's great what you're doing, but it doesn't add up because it's so counter to this capitalistic, materialistic society in which the goal of life is he or she or they who has the most toys at the end wins. And those of us who are doing this work are finding purpose, finding joy, and also finding healing and providing services for other people.
I'm sorry. It is 4:30
Oh,
already.
no,
Wow.
it's not.
Yes. I know you could
Wow.
go on forever, and it's been really, really engaging. So I'm gonna let you wrap up. I'm just gonna be respectful of people's time, and
Yeah.
I'll close out. Any information that you didn't share, you want to share, we could send that to the list. I have the whole list.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yes. So, I guess the conclusion, and thank you all. This went by so fast. One of my favorite authors, Deepak Chopra, says, you figure out your purpose. Think about what time, something that you do with time escapes you, and then figure out how you can use it to serve others. And that's how you find your purpose. And time definitely escaped me so quickly. Here I was earlier today, like, man, I got to do this. It's going to be a long time, but it went by like a flash. And it went by because of the spirit of the folks who are a part of this conversation. It went by because you all have been so engaged, and I'm so grateful. There's several projects that I'm working on that I wanted to definitely share with you all, but I'm definitely mindful of the fact that, again, right, I don't want to create an additional burden, because I know y'all probably sitting there thinking about emails you want to send, people probably texting you with crises and problems. School just ended. You got to go check your kids' school and make sure they did all their assignments because they're working from home. And as Tiffany said earlier, unfortunately, New York is going fully remote. So I'm giving you a lot of blessing, a lot of prayers and peace and patience for that process, and for all of y'all who are dealing with it. I will reach out to everyone, Tiffany, if it's appropriate with you, and share more information about these projects, because I would love for y'all to be a part of them. But I also would love for y'all to just share anything that you're working on. And if you want some additional support, we can continue this conversation. Go ahead, Brucey B.
Yeah, man, the same thing, man. I appreciate all y'all for coming out and holding space. Like, thank the Incredible Message Justice Center for holding space for this. Because this is so important, man. Our healing has to be, before we do anything, move forward, we have to heal, man. So I want to also thank Black Mental Health Alliance, thank Training Grounds, thank everybody who came out in support, and know that we come together as a tribe. Like, I think Deetra, I haven't seen Deetra's in Atlanta, and DC, just to see her up on here, man, it's just phenomenal, man. Veronica, Mama Jeanette, and everybody else, man. Our healing has to be something that we look forward to, not a burden, like something we look forward to. And thank you, Richard, man. Like you always, like you show up in this kind of energy and this kind of vibration, man. It's inspiration to me and everybody else, man. My Healing Scale family, man. I just see like people on here I didn't see, like, it's just so loud to see them, man. Like you smile when you say Healing Scale family, you just smile. Like that's what I do too, man. Yeah. That's loud.
And thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Alfredo. Thank you, Hernan. Thank you.
That's right.
No
Same to you tomorrow.
Yes. So this concludes our 3-part webinar series. I hope everyone enjoyed and felt the webinars to be helpful, informative, and quite engaging. The webinars will be on our website. This particular webinar will be on our website hopefully by Friday the latest, if not Monday. I want to thank Dr. Bruce Purnell, Richard Smith, for just having this open dialogue, enlightening us here today. We are going through trying times, and people really need it. I mean, we need it every day, but especially today. If you want to join CMJC, I am putting a whole list of my email and information into the chat. Please stay on and fill out the evaluation or survey. And we thank you for joining us. I want to thank the CMJC partners for coming together and putting this webinar series together. With that being said, I am putting the information into the chat. Thank you.